Good morning, watchers. Welcome to Brother Sal's Sunday Gathering at the Storehouse, our weekly commentary on world events. We first started in 1996 and have become more relevant ever since. Today, posting 2 shows per week to our YouTube channels, BroSal and Philadelphia Church. For 20 years, we have integrated the historical landscape that unfolds daily with the prophetic analysis anticipated by eschatology. We bring you non-traditional insights and uncensored discussion of issues purposely ignored by media of all kinds. Join us now for the only discussion of its kind. And joining me again this week is my son, Tony. Welcome, Tony. What do you have for us?
Good morning, Dad. Thanks for having me on the show. I thought we'd go over some news this week because I'm finding that the world is really coming together in the way that, unfortunately, we've been anticipating the last year or so, which is this build-up toward war, and not just war, but as we've been talking about with the pulling the strings and division. I mean, that's what is coming to my mind as I keep studying what's going on in the world and supposedly what's going on behind the scenes as we get closer to the sort of manipulations, and they're not just about oil and money. I mean, that would seem to be the surface level manipulation that these different sovereign groups of people, and when you think about the idea of divide and conquer, when you think about the old idea of order out of chaos, then it means using every line of contention, every ideological difference, every national, difference based on nationality or even boundary, right? Just always setting people up against the thing that they're naturally against, fueling that rather than reconciliation. So that whether they want to turn the heat up and create hostilities, open hostilities, people fighting about things, or for whatever other reason, like economic benefits, they want to go build factories in an area, let's say. So they turn that part of it, like I'm always pointing out in Central America or South America. The people don't have guns and weapons and militaries, and they're not killing each other. They're working in the fields owned mostly by these same people that sell the guns to other people. So I'm saying, that's the part. The more I learn about the Middle East, Dad, I've been saying it for some time, this can't all be about oil because they already own the oil. They already know how to make alternative energy. They have the energy that Tesla was showing them from his time. They have the, all the alternatives they've been working with that now result in things like the Tesla automobile, nanotechnologies, and God knows what that we don't know about that they're already doing with technology in the way of energy weapons and all sorts of things. In fact, the first time I've ever seen that talked about in serious print, I hope we get to this week. Energy weapon. That's never been something. That was always sci-fi in my life. Now we're actually using them and calling them energy weapons. It's just we're not claiming that it's the kind of technology that could dustify the Twin Towers, turn steel to dust and mangle steel and all the sort of things that Tesla was doing and that seemed to have gotten done on 9/11. Nobody's claiming that sort of technology, but they are claiming this focused energy weapon. And so, anyhow, we'll get to that with all this, buildup of weaponry in the modern world. So the first piece of news that caught my eye from the 14th yesterday out of the AP Germany to spend $106 billion on refugees. And they're pointing out that Germany's assessed the situation now and figure that over the next few years until 2020, they're going to spend about $100 billion, 93.6 billion euros to support the refugees over the next 5 years. They touch on in this article the fact that that they expect most of them over the next 5 years, the legal refugees, to actually find work. And so, of course, the part that isn't really spoken of much in this particular article is that the German industries will benefit from the influx of cheap labor, that they're spending this money in part to help learn the language. You know, they're spending this money to help set them up as cheap labor. So it's not hurting everybody if you think about it. The people, the IG Farbens of the world that in Germany that own the interest in the big companies, you know, are probably looking to see some gain out of this. The people that are upset are the average workers, like what's been going on in California all my life, right? Seeing the jobs go away to cheaper places, or the jobs that remain go to immigrant labor. All my life, it's been either, you know, Chinese or Mexican, for the most part, laborers that come in, and Filipinos in Hawaii, and they do all the cheap labor that the locals don't want to do. And so some of the people in Germany are screaming that, you know, obviously these jobs are going to cut in to the certain number of jobs that are still, you know, better paid by people that are making a little better living. So I see it all as still what it was always meant to do, is just create more division, among other things. They get a lot of mileage out of it, either in the press, scaring people about terrorism. Remember when they were, Dad, it was, how long's it been, a year or whatever, 6 months anyway, since they were sending these refugees, and ISIS was claiming they were sending terrorists in with the refugees. Remember when that was all the rave for a few days on the news, every channel, top story? What are we going to do? This is going to ruin the world. People like Orban in Hungary have been screaming for how long, how this is going to change the face of Europe forever. You know, Germany's now talking about it's a $100 billion situation, and it's going to result in a couple of million refugees being, it says almost 1.1 million asylum seekers entered Germany last year, although the government has stressed that the figure doesn't account for those who move on to other countries or return home. The finance ministry predicts that 600,000 will come to Germany this year, falling to 400,000 in 2017, 300,000 in the following years. It assumes that over half of those who are officially recognized as refugees will find work within 5 years. So they're looking at 500,000 or more, almost 1 million new workers finding work. Thanks to low unemployment and strong exports, Germany recorded a budget surplus of 12.1 billion euros last year on federal spending of 300 billion. So anyway, they're talking about still balancing their budget despite the cost of dealing with the influx. So that's what a not changing the world problem it is that they've been making out of it for months. I don't know when they're going to bring back the whole, you know, there's not a word in here about the terrorists that everybody's worried. How many of them are terrorists? Didn't ISIS claim they were sending terrorists with the refugees? What happened to that? Was that just blowing smoke up my bottom for the week? Sure starts to feel like that after a while. I mean, 9/11, you know, this was a jihad. These guys had made their big move. They somehow infiltrated our system, somehow being run from a cave in Afghanistan, you know, overran the greatest defense system in the world, stole 4 planes, which we have all sorts of systems in place for things like that, flew them off track for almost an hour, and then into buildings, magically, into buildings. They didn't just blow up on the outside of buildings like an airplane would. These planes actually flew into 3 buildings, and another one disappeared in a hole that it made in the middle of nowhere. Just disappeared. No plane's ever done that either, but these did. So all this magic stuff happened on 9/11, and ever since then, we've got this world of war on terror, constant war in the Middle East, constant buildup and constant problem, and the refugees, they were sending terrorists with the refugees. But yet ever since 9/11, what else have they done of any significance, right? The San Bernardino shooting in California, 2 crazy people, 2 crazy local jihadists, even if you believe the official story, go on a shooting rampage, and we're going to call that worldwide. We gotta sacrifice all our liberties and change our way of life because of that. That's always been around, people. There's always been nutballs willing to go out and kill themselves. This is all such a staged absurdity. So anyway, Germany's got to spend $100 billion for the refugee issue because we just want to make sure that it's still a big problem in Germany. And I say it's because it's going to drive the German people apart. Even in the most stable economy, they're going to create the fight that these people are taking the jobs. And so the Germans can take up sides. They've already got this right-wing party that's threatening Merkel's government that's all like, pro-Hungary, pro-Orban. Right-wing, get them out of here. They ain't got no rights. We're treating them better than we're treating our own people. And of course, that's a legitimate point. That's why they set up the world. So both sides have a legitimate point. It's so absurd. The chaos is so inevitable. So here's another one. I really haven't heard this side of it yet, but it makes perfect sense to me. China says Pentagon report, quote, severely damaged relations. And this is out of the AFP from today, May 15th. China on Sunday accused the U.S. of deliberately distorting the facts in a report on the Asian giant's defense policy, warning Washington it had, quote, severely damaged trust between the superpowers. The Pentagon on Friday said Beijing had been building up military facilities on reefs and islets in a bid to assert its claims to the contested waters off the South China Sea. China's military has also been using, quote, coercive tactics to foster tensions with its neighbors, but will ensure they do not snowball into outright conflict, according to the annual report to Congress. Beijing hit back on Sunday in comments published in state media with a defense ministry spokesman saying the Pentagon report had deliberately distorted China's defense policies. Quote, it is the United States that has been flexing military muscles by frequently sending military aircraft and warships to the region. The U.S. annual report on China's military and security developments has severely damaged mutual trust between the two sides, unquote. Yang accused the U.S. of being behind the, quote, militarization in the South China Sea, unquote, parts of which are claimed by Vietnam, Taiwan, Brunei, Malaysia, and the Philippines, as well as China. The South China Sea, an important shipping route thought to be home to vast energy deposits, has become a growing source of tension between Beijing and Washington as the U.S. turns its focus on Asia. So, I hadn't even thought of that. I just was picturing, we're fomenting the tensions by pointing in the region, saying, oh, look what China's doing, look what China's doing. But no, of course, it's what we're doing that China's responding to. Just like the person that's from China that's been listening to our show pointed out that what's going on in Korea is North Korea is simply going, hey, I'll shoot back if I have to. You're pushing. You're the one building up. You're the one flexing military muscles. You're the one, South Korea-backed United States, holding the drills and threatening that you're going to take over our side of things. which when you look at it, really, I mean, who do they really want to, like, what, move in and set up government in these countries? No, they already did, you guys. They already did 100 years ago. They've been working on getting their mitts on all these countries. And people like Russia and China, they're gone a long time ago. That's why they all wear suits and ties, I promise you. You know? But, so their strings are being pulled, in my view. They don't necessarily have to know it because, like I say, their centers of power have been around long enough that they're all working for people that, in their eyes, are the people that are paying them. And they're not U.S. congressmen. They're local Russians, local Chinese businessmen, Chinese moguls, the behind-the-scenes Chinese cartel who tells everybody what to do or you're dead. So they only know, they've created a world. This is what I really see this week, Dad, reading the news. I want people to see that I've been saying for some time. They've created a world in which they use the pretense of peace and taking weapons, reducing weapons in order to build up weapons and keep constant war. Why, when you go back and look what their think tanks have taught them, war is the only thing that ensures their continued rulership. There's just not enough of them. The world's too big and there's not enough of them to rule the world through power. And even their divide and conquer must seem at times to them quite a shaky ship, all through these last couple of centuries anyway, that they've been attempting to use that banking influence and use that idea of a new age of consciousness, a new age of rulership, where the people that were either biologically destined to rule or divinely chosen to rule were finally to rule and not to be threatened by the masses and the profane that could just destroy everything. I mean, think if you're someone who believes in eugenics and the reality of evolution as they've presented it. And when you look back, all the great universities were all built at that time after Darwin, after these people with money found out that if you let your race mix with these other people, that's it. You can't go back. You can't just turn it around. You can't breed it out of them now. There's no way to know, except that it will draw humanity backwards. Now that we've identified these superior races, if you want it to keep going forward, you need to keep breeding the superior races with each other. So whether you're coming from the materialistic standpoint, and then they built all these schools, ones you've never even heard of for the most part. You've heard of Yale and Oxford and Harvard and such, and yeah, they come along also. But the real blue blood schools are ones that aren't even so popular. The names even escape me because I've only heard them a couple times from John Taylor Gatto, who I've tried to share with everybody. You're the best teacher you'll ever have on the history of education, where that comes from, why they indoctrinate us the way that they do. And it's to control the population because it's the only thing they've ever feared. It is the only thing to fear when you have that sort of control over masses of people. What if the people side with somebody else? You don't have enough guns. And so that's why it's been a psychological operation for so long. If you could get in their heads, then you don't need all the guns already can't help you. So what's the next step? Keep them afraid. How do you keep them afraid? Keep them at war with somebody. Even if it's aliens. And they must have thought, well, damn, how are you going to get them to believe in aliens? I don't know. Let's try. Let's get some genius to write a radio show, since that's the technology we have now. We're in everybody's living room that is capable of listening. And let's just make it like aliens have invaded and see what happens. And what happened? People went nuts. They found out their power of suggestion that they'd been working on worked really well. And so they've been on that track for 100 years. And if you don't think that, you're just crazy. I mean, at least the last 50, 60 years, it's sort of well documented. Their notions about the capabilities of mind control and how to use them for good or evil or whatever. Their whole assessment of that potential and that industry. And then the documentation of the military deciding what was in America's best interest in using that technology. And it turns out it was in our best interest to take all those Nazi war criminals from World War II, which were all funded by our guys, and bring them over here and fund those scientists to keep working on such sciences as the psychological mind control and such. So anyway, I'm just trying to bring the news into that. That's where it really belongs, if you understand it. It's all part of the mind control manipulation of the world into being scared all the time of something, divided about something, because scared and divided is what makes us easy to rule and impossible for us to ever come together and really shake it up. But I still think that's what they fear, and that's what the whole depopulation is about. It's not about, we need to save the world. I think their science understands quite clearly that the planet, they have the technology to allow the planet to heal itself, that there's nothing they're going to do that can't be undone, though they may tell us that. The uranium, this and they want people divided, mad. We're using bombs that are killing and leaving uranium and destroying the earth. I'm telling you, you can never know what's true. I'm sure some of that's true, but whatever could be used to foster division would be used naturally to foster division. That's the whole point. So I'm trying to present that we are on a collision course with division that's going to bring about the war. And it's got to be this religious division that's being built up because it's religion these people are against, whether they're materialists or some Luciferians, right? Whether they're from that group that we've been studying. Either way, they hate Christians. They hate religious people that are separatists and exclusionists and radicals and zealots, and ready to kill everybody else but their own, but the one, God loves us but hates everybody else. If you're a materialist, you see what a perverted, absurd idea that is on any level. It makes no sense on any level. It makes zero metaphysical sense. It provides for hate philosophy. It provides for all sorts of things like Spanish Inquisition. If there were such a reality, well, then you'd be justified in torturing people for their own good. Save their soul so they don't get damned to hell, even if you got to peel their skin off bit by bit to do it. So, yeah, it's crazy what religions have been able to be pushed to. The limits. I mean, it's like the way I see it is all of those things in religion, the radicalism is something that in the modern sense has been a psychological operation. How far can you push these Christians, these Jews, these Muslims? Can you get the Christians jumping up and down to scream for the blood of the only other people in the world that know Jesus is returning and are waiting for Jesus to return? And actually get them to go give their life and their blood and their money and hate their neighbor for the state of Israel, whose Talmudic scriptures essentially call Jesus explicitly call Jesus a bastard and born of a prostitute, essentially a harlot. And that the blood of Christians is something, to feel good about spilling. That's what the Talmud, I'm not pretending I know the entire Talmud the way people can pull scriptures out of the Bible and make them mean anything they want. But the Talmud would appear to be the alternative story to Jesus, to be able to defend the fact that Jesus was a bastard and a liar. And so, if you're a Christian, you got to feel the Talmud has got to be one of the furthest things from the truth, even if it's subtly untrue. It must be untrue, and yet these are who the Christians are supporting, these Talmudic Zionists. They don't make any bones about the Talmud being their source of inspiration and knowledge, and yet Christians are standing in churches every day with their little there's Zionist flags, not even Jewish, got nothing to do with Judaism. The Star of David is no such thing. This Judaic symbol of the pentagram. This is all very modern stuff, and used to identify. The pentagram, of course, is not modern, but this Star of David concept used to identify these Zionists and the Rothschild shield, and all being the same pentagram symbol being applied in different ways. So, yeah, the pentagram's very old, but this application of it to Judaism is not very old. And this Judaism that Christians are so crazy about is, as I say, it's the antithesis of Christianity. It's the very thing that hates Christianity more than, even atheists don't hate Christianity as much as the Talmudic Jews, who see it as such a danger and always have. Okay, so anyway, so China says it's the Pentagon that's severely damaging their relations with this report, because it's us, the USA, that's militarizing that. See, and why? Well, what did it say? Important shipping route, thought to be home to vast energy deposits. So I guess that's a reason to go get your guns all set up so that when this war comes, you can make sure nobody gets in there and disrupts it. From yesterday now on, it's called The Drive. Never heard of them. Video shows PKK fighter blasting a Turkish AH-1 Cobra out of the sky with a shoulder-fired missile. And now this is an important article. So I think these next few articles, I'm trying to read some today, so I think people should pay attention to these next few articles. Okay, so I'm going to read some of this article here to you. They're so excited to show you a video of a PKK fighter blasting a Turkish AH-1 Cobra out of the sky with a shoulder-fired missile, just like you watch in the movies. Both the military and political wars in Syria and Iraq have greatly complicated the fight against ISIS. Though the self-proclaimed caliphate represents a largely common foe, the threat posed by it hasn't quelled existing conflicts in the region. One of those is the deep hatred and seemingly perpetual warfare between the Turkish government and the Kurdish sub-faction known as Kurdish Workers' Party, or more commonly, the PKK. Turkey sees the PKK as a terrorist organization and treats them as such, even though they have been among the most potent anti-ISIS fighters on the battlefield. Even though Turkey formally entered the anti-ISIS coalition last year, opening up bases for U.S. and coalition aircraft and putting its own massive aerial arsenal to work, it bombed PKK facilities and ISIS ones on the same opening night of airstrikes. U.S. Special Operations soldiers are actively supporting and working with Kurdish YPG fighters, which have strong ties to the PKK. It's a tangled situation. The bloody tit-for-tat warfare between the PKK and the Turkish government has hit a new pinnacle with the video released today showing a PKK fighter shooting down a Turkish AH-1 Cobra attack helicopter with a man-portable air defense system. The dramatic footage shows the missile which appears to be a Russian-designed SA-7 derivative, streaking into the sky and blasting the Cobra to pieces. A day ago, PKK forces claimed responsibility for the downing of the Cobra, while Ankara claimed it was a technical failure. If a heat-seeking missile breaking an aircraft in half is seen as a technical failure, that would be accurate. This next paragraph's important before we sort of sum it up. The introduction of man pads, they're called, these man-portable air defense system. The introduction of man pads into conflicts, especially insurgencies, can dramatically level the playing field when it comes to the use of rudimentary air power against a lightly equipped foe. This most famous occurred in Afghanistan in the 1980s when the CIA furnished FIM-92 Stinger man pads to mujahideen getting clobbered by Russian attack helicopters and close air support jets. The introduction of this single weapon system to the conflict turned the war against Russia and brought about its defeat, a move that helped speed the end of the Cold War. Manpads also were prominently used recently in the conflict in eastern Ukraine, where Russian-backed separatists swatted Ukrainian aircraft from the sky. Okay, so the thing that this makes me think, Dad, is first of all of this created violence over there that nobody seems to be, how exciting, this guy's shooting down an air helicopter. Okay, first of all, when did all the aircraft get involved? Right? There wasn't a need for all these man pads in the region because, and who had it? We were just told not long ago it's only America and Russia with aircraft, NATO aircraft and Russian aircraft, which is why we were hoping to avoid conflicts. Remember when they almost got in a fight? When Turkey shot down a Russian plane already now, and America and Russia we went through that period when Russia came in with their planes. We were saying, geez, we don't want to create any problems. The only two people, ISIS don't have any planes. Iran's not up there flying jet fighters around. Nobody was doing any of this. And now all of a sudden you got these weapons that can shoot planes down. And what planes can they shoot down? Well, now you're finding out they can only really shoot down. You're going to find out more in another article that I want to get to today. They can shoot down these rudimentary air power. It says here, the introduction of manpads into conflicts, especially insurgencies, can dramatically level the playing field when it comes to the use of rudimentary air power against a lightly equipped foe. So who's got rudimentary air power? You're going to find out it ain't us. Later in this article, you're going to find out it's not us, and it's not Russia's new stuff. There's a lot of stuff flying around the air that isn't subject to these man pads. But this particular PKK helicopter, this Turkish AH-1 Cobra, was. And they state, I think later in this article, whether it didn't have the type of capability, the countermeasures, or whether they didn't get time to use them. Our new stuff, it's all automatic. That's where these energy weapons are going to come in that I told you about. But anyway, here, what it's, this conflict, Turkey and the PKK, was NATO authorizing Turkey to be out there with attack helicopters? Well, no, because they're fighting ISIS. Oh, okay, they're fighting ISIS, and so is the PKK. Oh, but Turkey's fighting the PKK. It's all these tangled webs, and so, of course, we're going to find out in maybe it is this article where it talked about these man pads getting in the hands of the wrong sort of people. Obviously, like they did in Afghanistan to be able to shoot down the Russian aircraft. But what we learned from here is it's rudimentary aircraft. So that means all these older planes, I don't know whose those are. Was it the stuff Egypt's been buying? Saudi Arabia's been buying? Jordan's been buying? I mean, is that why they're equipping these guys with these man pads? Because at some point, they'll be able to shoot down all the planes they want except for the ones with the new kind of technology. That's what I'm seeing anyway, Dad. Okay, so let's get to more of the puzzle, more of the strings being pulled. Iran breaches the nuclear deal and UN resolutions for the third time. This is by Dr. Majid Rafizadeh. Rafizadeh. Sorry, I'm not good at pronouncing strange words to me. Iranian leaders have breached both the resolutions and the nuclear agreements for the third time since the nuclear deal went into effect in January 2016. Iran has repeatedly test-fired long-range ballistic missiles and laser-guided surface-to-surface missiles. In October and November, just after the nuclear deal was reached, Iran tested a new ballistic missile capable of carrying multiple warheads. In March, Iran again test-fired 2 ballistic missiles. More recently, and for the third time, the Iranian government fired a test missile 2 weeks ago, which was accurate to 25 feet, which is characterized as zero error, according to the Brigadier General Ali Abdullahi, the Iranian military's deputy chief of staff. The range of existing Iranian ballistic missiles has grown from 500 miles to over 2,000 kilometers, roughly 1,250 miles, which can easily reach Eastern Europe as well as countries such as Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Yemen. Iranian leaders dismissed the notion that the Revolutionary Guard Corps military activities are breaching the nuclear agreement, as well as several of the UN Security Council resolutions. World powers appear to acquiesce to Iran's stance as well. But the United Nations Security Council resolution is clear. The resolution, quote, calls upon Iran not to undertake any activity related to ballistic missiles designed to be capable of delivering nuclear weapons, including launches using such ballistic missile technology, unquote. The second UN Security Council Resolution 1929 indicates, quote, Iran shall not undertake any activity related to ballistic missiles capable of delivering nuclear weapons, including launches using ballistic missile technology, and the state shall take all necessary measures to prevent the transfer of technology or technical assistance to Iran related to such activities. The 5 members of the UN Security Council have not reacted forcefully, or taken appropriate measures to hold the Iranian government accountable for the violations. Generally speaking, China and Russia, which enjoy their strategic, geopolitical, and economic alliance with Tehran and favor Iran's counterbalanced stance against the U.S. and its allies, have used Iran's line of argument for launching the ballistic missiles. France, Britain, and Germany, which are much to the left of the U.S., or sometimes follow in the footsteps of Washington's policy towards Iran, have not taken these military maneuvers seriously. So I won't keep reading it, but that's the general gist, Dad, is here's your dividing up, right, on these, World War III, the 2 lines being drawn. I mean, haven't I been saying something like that? Where's Iran going to get the guns in the end? Obviously, this is what Russia's been building guns for all along. So you've got it drawn up on the lines of, Russia and China having to side with Iran, where France, Britain, Germany, they're tentatively, that's why Turkey seems to be the one that's kind of being thrown again, like World War I, back to they're going to get sacrificed again, like the Ottoman Empire. They've done their part, this secularized Turkey that busted apart the Ottoman Empire and helped destroy Islam, has, done its part, and now they're not going to let it become the caliphate again. They got their own plans. They're going to destroy that they're going to use him to come in as a destroyer for them, with the promise that he's going to be the caliph. I mean, I think that's the way it's going to go. And maybe he is, because remember, this one that takes Jerusalem that we think is this the white horse, righteous king of Revelation, the first seal that we've always imagined is this Hashemite king of Jordan, this person gets defeated after he takes Jerusalem, right? He's heading off toward Damascus, which, who's ruling it by then? Wouldn't it be NATO? Isn't that where we're coming at this point, where lines are going to be drawn? And this is what he's finally going after, but he's defeated. So perhaps, the secularized Turkey knows that they're going to eventually get that area under their, control. So anyway, it just here's the lines being drawn up, I think, for where the guns go, basically. And Iran already being, accused in our propaganda. And I say you can't read any of this as if it's real, just like who knows what's really going on in the South China Sea. That's what the Chinese would be expected to say, wouldn't they, if they really mean business? But do any of these people mean business against us? Are we really so vulnerable? Are we really as stupid as we played with the, we didn't know Russia would come in. We didn't think the refugee crisis would be like this. Who knew the war would just be an endless bloody escalation? Who knew the Arab Spring, that we just couldn't fund the good guys that were trying to have democratic, we just couldn't get behind them and send guns in there to help protect them from these radicals, as if these radicals were everybody. How many are there? I mean, look in these countries now. The radicals are these small groups that have to be almost invisible and join these invisible dark people like Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, or ISIS. Where are they? Do they have buildings? Do they have schools they send their children to? How hard would it be for the world to get in there and fund the popular opposition to these radicals and just keep these radicals at bay, instead of just the opposites, what we've always done? We say that while we're funding the radicals and creating all the tension and the horror and the terrorism and the chaos that keeps these people in ultimate control. And I say that ultimate control seems to be leading to this Third World War, which I don't think has to do with oil, since they've already got it. Territory, they know how to control it. Just go in and destroy people. Divide and conquer. They seem to have no problem taking over South America, Central America, Korea, Vietnam. All that area has been taken over and kept down. Indonesia, they had one prime minister that rose up and in this system they were given and tried to say, hey, well, we need to get back on printing gold. I mean, we're Muslims. We're not supposed to be using this illegal system of usury, this fake money that enslaves people. It's just a tool of slavery. And so they had to get him deposed. It's the last time you've ever, heard anything from Indonesia. And I can only imagine, probably because it's full of people who are kind of devout. They really are people who are trying to live a good life. They really want to do the right thing. They're not ready to sell out their entire culture for a Bluetooth in their ear and a big screen TV for their kids to watch 24 hours a day and a life on Facebook. Would they if they were offered all that? Probably. Which is why the dangerous thing is, in the people in power going out and using their tools against people. And so that's what seems to have gone on. Those tools like television and media and such, they could probably be used for brilliant things. And they are, obviously, now and again. But the overall purpose of them is obvious. It's to control the masses. And ultimately, the masses are dangerous. So within that control frame of reference, eliminating, I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, Deb, but I've come across it in these last couple of weeks. In their own words over the last 50 years, at least since the 70s, have been that they got to take population control very seriously. That the number one problem of the future is too many people. Not enough resources and too many people. And so that has been the focus for a generation. And you don't hear much about it. And like I said last week, beware of the things you don't hear much about. You don't hear much about space weapons. You don't hear much about Tesla technology. You don't hear much about this new Aquarian time, this third world war to bring about a new age on the earth with less people and, in their mind, a utopic vision. Get all these stupid religious people out of the world and have their world of no war and no conflict because it's run like an efficient monarchy with the ones that are supposed to rule up top and all the peasants and the rest of the people happily going about their peasantry, as Aldous Huxley predicted, in love with their slavery, in full consent of their bondage. So, that's the world that, I'm still seeing coming, and the sort of the motivation, the energy behind what we see in the news. It's not just having war to have war. It's not having war to divide up the country boundaries, because you've seen them do that. Look at what they did after World War I with the treaty that completely redivided up Europe. And then after World War II, the unfairness of that treaty that forced Germany into the position of being so desperate that it had to fight back. There was nothing left to do. And the only place it got funding was for a radical named Adolf Hitler and his party that claimed they had to fight back. And so they had the only plan and the one that was funded. So that's how it's done. So they don't need a war to redivide lines, to get rid of Russia. They built up Russia. We talked about it, I think, last week. The same people, the same Jewish money, if you will, if we could even call it Jewish, Khazarian money, Rothschildian money, Pentagramian money, whatever. That same money that funded the Bolshevik Revolution. I mean, it's Jews that took over Russia and murdered all those Christians. That was the whole point. They were the ones motivated by their Talmud to do it. Thought they were doing the work of God. And so that seems to be, or at least who they present to us is in charge of our country. It's all Jews behind media. It's all Jews behind Washington. It's all Jews behind lobbying. It's all Jews behind lawyers. And, it's all these Jews with this Zionistic tendency. And as I say, I think they're all being used by someone beyond that probably isn't Jewish and is using them. That part I haven't gotten to the bottom yet. Is the Talmud the top thing? Or is, this Luciferian, divine bloodline people using the Talmudic Jews like their little slaves? Is that how the devil's doing it? I don't know. But Iran breaches the nuclear deal, and so we're dividing up the world over there because, of course, nobody's saying, this is dangerous, so Iran, we're going to have to put sanctions back on you. No, everybody's just, hey, Russia and China have economic ties, so they're not screaming. The other European countries, we're not screaming about it. Because meanwhile, what's Iran doing? Well, they're buying guns from Russia, right? They're sending oil. They're selling oil again. They're buying guns. So all of that obviously is working towards somebody's plan. Okay, we got from the 13th out of Reuters, Russia will act to neutralize U.S. missile shield threat. I'm sure everybody's heard about this because it seems to be big in this social media news that I get. They've shown this about 3 times this week. Ballistic missile defense shield, which the United States has activated in Europe, is a step to a new arms race, Vladimir Putin said on Friday, vowing to adjust budget spending to neutralize, quote, emerging threats to Russia. So, NATO's doing a fantastic job, aren't they? The only other people in the world with military that could really do harm to the world. Another Cold War, which, if you remember, was the war where everybody had to be scared 24 hours a day because two superpowers each had their finger on a button that could cause ultimate annihilation of the planet. So isn't that wonderful that NATO's got us back to that? We're back to Putin saying he's got to adjust budget spending to neutralize emerging threats. The United States switched on the $800 million missile shield at a Soviet-era base in Romania on Thursday, saying it was a defense against missiles from Iran and so-called rogue states. So, of course, we got North Korea. They got missiles blowing up in their face, but we got to activate an $800 million missile defense shield that's going to make Russia have to respond now, right? I mean, does all of this sound like provocation to you? Is this what you do in a peace process? Is this how you do when you're NATO, to say, let's make the world a safer place for our kids? But speaking to top defense and military industry officials, Putin said the system was aimed at blunting Russia's nuclear arsenal. Quote, "This is not a defense system. This is part of U.S. nuclear strategic potential brought onto a periphery. In this case, Eastern Europe is such a periphery," Putin said. Quote, "Until now, those taking such decisions have lived in calm, fairly well off, and in safety. Now, as these elements of ballistic missile defenses are deployed, we are forced to think how to neutralize emerging threats to the Russian Federation. Coupled with deployment in the Mediterranean of U.S. ships carrying Aegis missiles and other missile shield elements in Poland, the site in Romania was, quote, yet another step to rock international security and start a new arms race. Russia would not be drawn into this race, but it would continue rearming its army and navy and spend the approved funds in a way that would, quote, uphold the current strategic balance of forces." So isn't that lovely? We're not worried about Iran firing missiles. We're not worried about North Korea threatening to blow up the world. We're not worried about China militarizing the South China Sea. We're just shipping guns everywhere. Okay, so now watch the other side of this this peace process. This non-provocation. Obama denounces Russia's aggressive military stance in Europe. Sounds like Russia was just denouncing our aggressive military motivations, but this is how we respond. So nobody can agree. Isn't that lovely? Isn't NATO doing its job? Nobody. I guess we both just keep calling. No, it's you. No, it's you. No, it's you. It reminds me of my last relationship. No, it's you. No, it's you. No, it's you. Obama denounces Russia's aggressive military stance in Europe. U.S. President Barack Obama warned Russia about its military buildup in Northern Europe Friday as he hosted leaders from 5 Nordic countries at the White House. Quote, "We are united in our concern about Russia's growing aggressive military presence and posture in the Baltic Nordic region," Obama said. As tensions with Moscow spike over a plethora of issues from aerial military interceptions to Ukraine, Obama looked to make common cause with Russia's near neighbors in Denmark, Iceland, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. Earlier, Obama said the 6 nations agreed on the need for a European order not based on might. Quote, "We believe that our citizens have the right to live in freedom and security, free from terrorism, and a Europe where smaller nations are not bullied by larger nations." So, Obama put Putin's government on notice that while willing to de-escalate tensions, the White House would also be prepared to counter any perceived Russian aggression. Quote, "We will be maintaining ongoing dialogue and seek cooperation with Russia, but we will also want to make sure that we are prepared and strong, and we want to encourage Russia to keep its military activities in full compliance with international obligations." In a joint statement, the 6 countries expressed concern about Russia's actions in the Baltic Sea region. Quote, its nuclear posturing, its undeclared exercises, and the provocative actions taken by Russian aircraft and naval vessels. So, it doesn't sound like anything's going too well with Russia. That's unfortunate, right? A few years ago, we seemed to have such potential for a future. I remember when we were talking about doing business over there because the Cold War was over, and now they weren't a big threat. Nobody had to be scared of Russia. We could, right? Visiting to Russia went up. I don't remember hearing anybody scared to go to Russia. But here we go again. And now this part, I think, this is like the poetic finale, if you will, or the crescendo at the moment, perhaps. Maybe it's not the finale, but this really brings things to the pitch that I'm seeing here. The world that makes no sense to me, and yet is obviously, I mean, think of the money these things cost. This is from The Drive on May 11th. Who is this, The Drive? I don't know who this is. Inside the F-22 Raptor's historic surprise deployment to Europe. 2 major things happened in the UK during late April that raised military aficionados' eyebrows and caught aviation observers with their pants down. The first saw the U.S. Air Force deploy 12 of the world's most advanced super fighters across the Atlantic without any warning. It just happened. A mass of F-22A Raptors left Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida and headed for England on a deployment that would last nearly 3 weeks. And no one outside the need-to-know military network had a heads up about it. It proved that such things can still be done without losing the element of surprise, a point that is extra significant when you consider that the UK has an entire community built around aircraft spotting and flight tracking. The second was as incredible as the first and saw a program first for this silver-clad 5th-generation fighter. 2 of the super-cruising, thrust-vectoring, stealth-optimized air dominance jets undertook a dedicated low-level mission through the UK's famous low-fly system. The Silver Angels dropping down from the heavens, weaving and glinting their way through the green valleys of Wales. I mean, don't they sound beautiful? They sound more like condors. They sound like beautiful birds. Isn't it something, the way these weapons of death and destruction that if NATO would have done its job, shouldn't even be, we shouldn't even need to spend all our children's future on weapons like this, let alone how many millions to deploy them just to go practice flying them around. And this is what I want people to see, the nature of this deployment and this practice. This is the longest article all week, too. This is a really important thing to us that we got out there with these beautiful angels dropping down from the heavens and flew them around England. The U.S. Air Force deployed 12 F-22A Raptors from the 95th Flight Squadron Boneheads. Their motto, death with finesse, and approximately 220 airmen and associated equipment to RAF Lakenheath, UK, to undertake a period of intense training with European-based aircraft. The Raptors swept into Europe on April 11, 2016, arriving in 2 waves over 2 days and remained deployed until May 9, 2016, with the final 4 jets leaving on May 10th. This was the largest F-22 deployment to Europe to date and is part of the unit's training plan to support Global Response Force contingency operations. That's capital GRF, Global Response Force contingency operations. So just think about that, guys. I mean, all of this war on terror, of course, we have global response continue. Think of how much this cost But we got to do it because we got to be ready, right, to have one of our top killing machines, one of the world's most lethal killing machines. And you'll find out these things are not susceptible to those man pads. But they are ready to be deployed anywhere as a global response force. During their time in the European theater, the airmen and aircraft participated in exercise Iron Hand, and also forward deployed in small numbers from the UK to other NATO bases. There they executed cooperative training with their host nations, demonstrated America's commitment to their NATO allies, and deterring any actions that could destabilize regional security. Without a doubt, putting F-22s on Russia's front doorstep definitely sends a strong message to Moscow, right? Because this is what you do when you're in a peace process. You show them you're ready to fire guns. Let's do it. Let's go. You want to push me? The Global Response Force, GRF, is a joint military team that stands ready for tasking by the U.S. Secretary of Defense to respond to crisis situations. Akin to a Department of Defense 9/11 emergency force, the GRF provides a menu of tailorable and rapidly deployable forces to respond quickly to a range of worldwide contingencies. Units are assigned on a rotational basis and conduct high-tempo training to be prepared for GRF mission. This F-22 deployment exercised the GRF capability and the Rapid Raptor concept to quickly deploy America's only combat-proven fifth-generation fighter on a moment's notice to anywhere in the world. See, and why is that important, guys? Right? Well, because the world's not safe. We don't live in a world where we can have these sort of weapons just to keep the development of technology going, because we don't spend our entire military budget, sending weapons all over the world, because the world's, always reducing its weapons and its need for military conflict. So, if that was the world we lived in, why would we need these global response force being, trained and tuned up and ready to go at a moment? Doesn't that say to you that we're expecting some sort of global crisis? You don't do that, right? You don't make all these preparations under conditions of peace, do you? And so, again, it's funny how none of our crack journalists ever seem to make the connection to the failure of the UN not to put us in a world of peace, but instead they keep presenting all our weapons of war and their advancements as such wonderful things. So they go on basically to describe the mission in, somewhat detail, aggrandizing it, what they were able to do, how well they worked with other, the Europeans. And one of the places 4 of them went to, guess what? From UK to Romania, right? So also to Lithuania, just to make sure, Romania is where we were turning on that missile defense system, remember, that's got Putin so angry. So we had a few over there. Yeah, I guess that's not provocation. That's what you do. And to pretend we don't know what anyone's going to do, right? We didn't know Russia was going to get involved. Just think what's gone on just in the last year or less, 6 months or so, since just before Russia's involvement, from it being a real problem, in the sense of now us creating the problem with Assad, the whole chemical weapons false flag, which the whole world knows. Assad's forces didn't fire chemical weapons. The rebel forces that we give money to, they fired chemical weapons. The sort that you can only get from people like us normally. And so that's the false flag that got this started, which certainly could have been straightened out diplomatically when you see how much diplomatic ties Assad really has. I mean, is he so hard to topple? Or is there a reason, Dad? I say there's a reason that this is all not an accident, that his resistance at this point is, both necessary and part of what it takes to get all these forces to keep this war going, right? Libya needed to be out of there. He's our guy too, I found out. I mean, Libya's all part of it. That's why these guys look so surprised. I mean, didn't Saddam look absolutely shocked when they were putting the rope over his neck? Like, you mean you're not going to come for me? I mean, wait a minute, where's the cavalry? Hey, I've been doing my part all these years. You told me to go and start selling oil in euros, right? I was doing what I was told. He looked absolutely shocked, just like the old Patsy and the Kennedy killing, right? Didn't Oswald look kind of shocked? Hey, wait a minute, me? So it's funny how they all had that look. Same thing with Gaddafi, huh? Me? Because, now I see they had all the weapons stored there that they needed to go out to these rebels and stuff, and now they have the pretext for that. They have the plausible deniability. Libya is a civil war zone. Egypt's under military rulership. There's the Brotherhood can start coming out of their caves now that they were being kept back in. So all of these radicals that really are radicals because they've been told your day's going to come. You're going to get funded. This training's going to pay off. You guys are going to be able to go out there and take this whole land for yourself. Get rid of these other, however they're selling it to them. Your right to rule. It's like our it's psychologically, it's got to come down to the same sort of thing because we're all human. We're all motivated in the same way. So I say that's how they, create this world. It's for real for us, But the people that, the Bashar al-Assads and the Colonel Gaddafis and the George Bushes of the world, they're all on that same kind of level, I think, of being used and doing their job. It's why their hair turns white and they get to be made men and women, as it turns out there, for their time. And I think it's part of the time we're coming into that they've had to do away with some of those made people that have been there so long. And it's been sort of a wake-up call to everybody else. And that's why everybody's got the guns out and ready, because they know the fight is on for your territory, for your life, for your people to be ruling instead of being under the rule of the maniacs on the other side, because that's the way they've set it up. They fund both sides. The maniacs on the other side of you, yes, they're getting their funding and inspiration and support from the same people that are telling you, man, you got to fight the good fight, man. You got to keep up the fight against these maniacs. Ultimately, it's the same people throwing the money at this game. And that, that's the way, look at these F-22, sending 12 of these things with 200 people and support over to Europe, to fly around Europe just to test it all out, right? Just to get everybody coordinated, brag about your global response, which means that I think, why do you do that? I say it's to test all your equipment, coordinate all your equipment, because you create the chaoses that you then go in global response to react to. It's not like those things just come up organically because, there's some group like they portray in the movies for us, like in Iron Man. You got some little group of jihadists up in the mountains of Afghanistan, and they organize for the buying and shipping and storing and deployment and use of all sorts of these weapons, right? But nobody, with all of our technology and our intelligence, we can't track that. We can't stop that. Sure. It just makes no sense at all. So who are these people that have these weapons if they're not people who are supposed to have them, like the war on drugs in Mexico? It's exactly the same pattern that they used to keep the war on drugs in Mexico going. They fund both sides. It is a war to the people that are in it. Those guns fire real bullets. And there's real people to fire them at, and a prize at the end of winning territory. There's money, there's riches, there's power in killing the right people for both sides. And again, when that only seems to make sense on a level where depopulation is a good thing. And if you look at the fact that these bankers and their minions and their brain trusts have been talking about depopulation, and population is the number one problem in their official papers, the stuff they've been putting into official circulation since the 70s, saying, yeah, we've looked at this and we really got to watch population. That's where you get all your Planned Parenthood and such. All these benevolent organizations, they're out there to follow through with what the Carnegie Foundation and Rockefeller Foundation think tanks found, which, put bluntly, we got to stop all these poor people from breeding, right? These are what we might call the less favorable races, or at least less favorable conditions that they're under. So any way you put it, they're the least favorable to be breeding, right? And of course, a lot of people so agree with that because that stance is official as the evolution we come from apes thing has been all my life. So yeah, you're going to find everybody's on board with there just are too many people, and those poor people in Africa and places like that, they should have some sort of contraception. They shouldn't just be able to breed like rabbits. No, I mean, the problem isn't that we allow them to develop their resources so that they have all the facility to breed however the nature provides for them to breed. And then if we want to help them, we provide the education so that just like we're making our decisions supposedly for our breeding technologies and techniques, whether it's contraception or limited childbirth or adoption and Planned Parenthood and all these kind of wonderful benevolent things we've done to contribute our part to the procreation of the planet responsibly. Why can't Africans be expected to do that? They're just too stupid. They're not. What? Are they not as smart as us? That if their resources were developed and their education was developed, they couldn't be trusted? They just keep breeding like rabbits? Well, I live in Mexico where they breed like from the time they're 15 years old. They don't believe in contraception. And they believe in, they're very pro-life down here. They love to have babies. They think babies are fantastic. They seem to have as many of them as they can. And one thing that I've noticed is I haven't seen anywhere. I mean, I know Mexico City is the most populated city in the world, but okay, who built that? Who runs that? Who benefits? What corporations are behind all the money coming in and out of Mexico City? Because I don't see the rancheros that live all through the country around here. They don't seem to be anxious to run off to the city and change their life. And they breed like rabbits. And if anything, it's the people in Mexico, the city people who don't, who are modern and have contraception and don't breed naturally. But the people all here along the coast and all the ranches in between, everywhere I've driven, I've driven halfway across Mexico from California. It's a good little piece down here. I've seen a lot of land, and they all seem to breed like rabbits. And it's funny, I don't see overpopulation. I don't see this big problem that people are so worried about. All the resources being used up. Heck, there's mangoes falling on the ground right now. Birds eating them, worms eating them, food all over the place here. So I say that the problem's always been the same thing, and they know what it is. It's how we live, not that we live. If we lived a natural life, we'd probably have a very natural mortality rate, which wouldn't be what they scare us. Everybody lived to be 30 and 40. Yeah, during the Black Plague, maybe. But you look at Arabs and people from China, they've been living to be 100 forever that we know of. They always, they have that sort of longevity in their culture right on through today. If anything, they've got more problems from today's chemicals and stuff in their food than they ever have. So all those arguments really do break down. And what they argue for is the evidence of depopulation, sterilization programs. Somebody wants less people in the world. And it looks like that they love using war and violence and killing to get it. And that may just go back to these sort of Luciferians, these people, children of Molech, that have been wanting human sacrifice since the very beginning. So that's still trying to get to the bottom of that, Dad, and working on it little by little in the in my study of what's going on in that world. So anyway, this week I thought we'd take a look at the news because I found it very compelling that the divisions and the build-up to war, unmistakable. You can't pretend that you're talking about a peace process, a stability, that the world should look for that all of this is going to result in more stability. What do we do when China launches a cyber attack on us and, crashes our economy or something like that? Are we as a people not already going to be sort of built up into a hostile frame of reference to say, well, darn it, we got to, we don't want to be warmongers, but we got to do to protect ourselves what we got to do? And would that then not give us the feeling of justification to go impose ourselves, on China's ability to respond? And would that not make China feel compelled to do something that they were now going to be occupied and suppressed the way Iran has been suppressed, being told what they can work on and when and how much of it they can have? See, would China go for that? Or would that compel their people to say, let's side with Iran and Russia and tell America, screw you, we'll fight first? So I think that's sort of the way it will come about. So, pressing the pressure points that actually exist. The people of the world will feel there's nothing they can do. And then, of course, we'll present it in our media as Russian and Chinese aggression. They're taking aggressive responses. Hey, they've got planes in the air. There's nothing we can do but get up there and protect ourselves. And, we shot down a couple of their planes, but there was nothing we could do. And so they're going to say, these son of a guns are shooting us down. And so it wouldn't be hard once you have tensions and through propaganda expectations of a sort to then escalate it to a point where you have your populations essentially screaming, go get them, kill them, don't let them get us. And I submit that that's exactly what they did in World Wars I and II, and that's what's coming in World War III. So anyway, good luck, everybody out there. Get away from them. Get away from their system. Get away from their money, or just, feel content that you can watch it coming and at least not be taken by surprise, not live in fear, because they push fear. So you don't have to live in fear. You just have to watch World War III coming in your time. It's kind of exciting. Anyway, thanks for having me on the show, Dad. I miss you. I'll see you next week.
Well, Tony, I think you're exactly right. And it was another superb analysis of this week's happenings in the news in the Middle East. And folks, I hope you enjoyed the show today. And give us a little feedback. Go to BroSal.org on YouTube or the Philadelphian Church on YouTube. And comment, drop us a line, subscribe. And if you like what you're hearing and you want this to continue, drop us a frankincense offering. There's a button right up on the right-hand corner of the title to keep this ministry and the word coming to you. And for Tony, I'm Brother Sal. Till next week, we want you to have a great day in Christ. Thank you.